right? We saw in the last video that one of the basic principles we have is like, it's punishing, that we're gonna immediately counter an attack, and we're gonna not just block, but we're gonna do something to our opponent. So in order to do that, though, there's a very important principle of sticking. So we're going to jump around the form a bit, but one of the things that we see, so if we do the form, right, we're here, one of the moves that we do is this, right? It's one of the first moves in the first section of the long form of the hidden tradition of the Yang style. So this move here, right, is essentially a variation on brush knee, right, which is usually done down here, brushing the knee and push. So they both have the same kind of arm movement. And I think this is one of the ideas that is incorporated within Tai Chi, which is sticking, right? And sticking is one of the four things that is four elements of push-ends, right? And there's different translation, and it's often gets quite confusing, but I think this actually explains what this is, right? Because you have things like sticking, adhering, following, and the fourth one, which basically means the same, basically, right? So you're always in contact with your opponent. And it's the translations and the explanations for them are sometimes fuzzy. Like, what's the difference between sticking and adhering? And part of it is either mistranslation, but it's also because there's always that fogginess in Chinese martial arts, where they'll use some specific language that if you're not part of the inner circle, you don't know what it means. So here we see sticking, right, in the sense that there's a punch. Not only do I deflect, but then I'm going to keep contact and move the arm, right? This is still very yin. It's not ward off. It's more roll back, where we're going to stick. And the idea is we're going to keep in contact with the opponent's arm. And we see that in several different places, right? So this is the clearest example. By the way, this looks very much like the sword form, right? Where there's a sword attack and you deflect by sticking the blade to the opponent. But even here, we're sticking, the arm stays. So I'm going to go very quickly just so that we can find ourselves within the form. So this is the beginning, right? And then we have here, and we close, and then we go here. So grasp the sparrow's tail. So even grasp the sparrow's tail here, right? So this right here, this arm, there's a punch coming towards my chest or my face, and I block. But I don't just block. I block and then I circle. So I keep contact with the punch, and then I go around and throw. So in order to throw, right? So just continuing the form, grasp the sparrow's tail, seal it closed here, push, and I'll come back right back to seal it closed. We continue here, and of course I'm going very fast, and then drag down into single whip. So we'll pause here for a second. So notice seal it closed after the press, here, and then strike. So this is again an example of sticking, right? There's a punch or there's a push, I deflect, and then I turn the hand over in order to control and keep contact with that incoming arm. So it's not just brushing to the side. I come in and I control. And this palm is sitting on top of the forearm of my opponent here, right? So again, I have contact. Same with drag down. This hand, so this is a deflection here, so there's a punch coming to the belly. This is a deflection, but my left hand in this case is in contact with my opponent's elbow, and it's going to stay in contact with my opponent's elbow all the way through the move, right? So again, once there's contact, we stick. Once there's contact, we stick. We stay, we deflect, we push. We stay in contact. We don't throw away, and we don't just block. We take in, and then we do something, right? The punishing aspect that we talked about in the previous video. But in order to punish, you have to stick. Single whip, all right? Here to here, then we come in, single whip. Again, I'm going very fast. Same here, right? there's a punch coming this way, we deflect, and then here we yank to the side. This hand is in control, which gives us a chance to do a joint lock. We'll talk about that later. So, but again, very fast, continuing here, elbow strike, shoulder strike. Again, elbow strike, this deflection here, right? Again, I'm not just slapping the arm away and then dropping, coming back to neutral. The whole idea of elbow strike is that I deflect, but then the rear hand is there to then hold and control. So again, I'm here and I stick. So everything that I do, there's a part of me, usually the hand, and often the rear hand, is still in contact with the opponent, still controlling the arm. I'm gonna, again, go quickly, go through, because here again, elbow strike, shoulder strike, but now we have this move right here. All right, I'm gonna show you this direction, which is here, kick, step in and strike. So here again, punch to the face, there's a block. So again, something we talked about before, that leaning that we have, right? Where again, it's not leaning the back, I'm sitting on the rear leg, tucking in the hips, but it gives me a few inches. So it's a punch to the face and I lean to get away, right? But at the same time, my left arm comes up. In this particular case, my right arm is already up, so it's really here. But the effective thing is really the left arm is blocking. So punch to the face, and then the left arm comes up. That's the block. And then I step and I turn, right? And again, here we're sticking. Punch to the face happens. I don't just block and then step in and punch. Instead, I come in, I stick. So this is the block. I stick, and then I step through. And as I step through, this arm is still in contact, right? Which is why the hand turns. And then when I've turned enough, this hand goes in for the strike, right? Because we're here, here, and notice that here I can't strike. The turn that comes from stepping frees up now this line for the strike. But again, this left hand is there in contact. So again, I'm sticking to the opponent. So we see that throughout, all right? Even so, again, I'm just gonna quickly finish. White crane, and then we come back and we do brush knee, play the pipa. Play the pipa. Now, here, there's a slightly different style of sticking. So so far we've seen sticking coming from the hands, right? So you're blocking, but the block is actually maintains contact and then is used in order to control and deflect and move your opponent's arm. Here we see a slightly different form of sticking. In play the pipa, there's a punch that comes essentially to the chest, right? So it's punch to the sternum. And we step and we turn. So again, going back to the initial videos, we use the feet in order to move the body. So the stepping is actually the most important part of the deflection. But what we also have here, right, for play the pipa, we have again, what becomes our rear hand, comes here, and comes here in front of our chest. And what this is, here, is a hold. Again, we're sticking. The punch comes to here, and I'm gonna use my hand and press my opponent's arm or hand against my chest as I turn. And notice that this straight line, notice what this shoulder is doing. It's coming here, and this, just using my shoulder, not even using my arm, can become a joint lock, right? But that joint lock only works because I'm compressing my opponent's hand or fist against my sternum. So I'm here, and now I can pull, right? So it's another form of sticking, and we're gonna see that several times because it's gonna be one of the core aspects of the wrestling and joint locks and joint control that we do, but we'll talk about that later. But the idea though, is that again, we're sticking, right? A fist comes, and either we control it with the arm, like grasp the sparrow's tail, right? Or brush knee here, or we control it using our own body, and we turn. So the sticking is both the arm but also the whole body itself. The whole body can stick to the opponent. And I think this is where, as a side note, those 4 types of sticking that we see that is often discussed in push hands, that's what this is about, right? Because you have sticking, following, adhering, and all that kind of stuff. There's the sticking that the body does, and there's the sticking that the arms does. So if I move my feet, right, I can follow, right, and move with my opponent. So this is more about the center of gravity, right, where I'm matching my opponent. If he moves back, I move forward. If he moves forward, I move back, right? So that's just the feet. The body itself can have a relationship with your opponent's body, and that's a form of sticking, right? We're going to see later on in terms of the wrestling, that's a crucial idea, this moving the distance between you and your opponent. Now, there's also sticking with the arms, right? The sticking and adhering. And so I think the clearest way of thinking about it is there's the yin and yang of the arms, and there's the yin and yang of the feet, right? So I can, if I'm matching my opponent, so if he comes towards me and I step back to maintain the distance, that's yin, right? Because I'm following my opponent. If he steps back and I follow, that's yang, right? I make the effort. I put in the energy to match my opponent, to step back into their space. So the feet can be yin or yang, right? Stepping forward is yang, stepping backward is yin. The arms can also be yin or yang. Am I catching something? This is yin, because I'm letting the opponent basically set the pace. So I'm catching a fist, so this is yin, right? But there's also the yang aspect where I'm actually moving forward into my opponent's space with my arms in order for my arms to be in their space, to be in contact. And we see this drag down. So here, this here, where my arm is there, I'm going to control. We're going to see there's a version of that which becomes more yang, right? If we go back, right, here, this move here, right? There's a punch coming this way. I step and I turn. This is the deflection here with this arm. We talked about this before. But now I'm going to swap, and then this elbow is going to find my opponent's elbow, and I'm going to yank to the side. So this is an example of coming here. I have control, I have contact, and now I'm going to make that contact even stronger. I'm going to use that contact, that moment of sticking, and I'm now going to do something with it, right? We have another example near the end. So let's see. In the former here, near the end, we do brush knee, play the pipa, and then we turn, drag down, brush knee, play the pipa, and then we go to the diagonal, twist the joint, and then there's this move here where we come in, brush to the side, and punch. So after twist the joint, we come in, brush to the side, cock back, and punch. So what this move does is that you've done twist the joint. The left palm in this case is holding on to your opponent's elbow. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap, right? Because here, there's nothing for me to do. So I want to bring my right arm and replace my left hand with my right arm, right? And then so that gives me the chance to then punch. I brushed my opponent's arm to the side, so it gives me space for me to punch it. The important part is this idea that, right, I'm swapping. I have control here, I stick here, and then I replace it with my arm. So that's the yang aspect, where I'm not just following, right, the arm of my opponent. I'm the one who's actually coming in and actively placing my arm. I'm actively keeping in touch, right, sticking to my opponent. No matter where he goes, I'm going to follow and maintain that contact. So I'm in charge of the contact instead of me receiving the arm. I'm actually going for the contact. I'm going for the sticking, right? So that gives us the 4 types of sticking that is often discussed in push hands, right? And I find it easier to think instead of sticking and adhering and following. No, yin and yang legs, yin and yang arms. Who's doing what? Who's moving forward? Who's moving back? Has the intention? And that seems a lot simpler to me and explains things a lot better. So, so that's sticking, right? So, in order to punish, like we saw last time, that we're always going to punish the attacker, we're going to stick. And that means there's always going to be part of us that is going to be in contact with our opponent, whether it's the arm in the yin fashion or the arm in a yang fashion, right? Where we're going after our opponent, we have control, and then we can keep control and do something. But we're following, we're keeping, we're sweeping, we're keeping contact with the opponent, with the arm, or like we said, with the body. Comes in, and I'm going to control, I'm going to hold the opponent against the body, right? Single whip, same thing here. This hand here is actually holding onto the arm here. So this hand is holding the fist of my opponent against my own chest, and I'm using that as an anchor to hold the opponent against my chest, right? And that gives me leverage to then do something else, right? So we're going to stick. So we're going to punish and we're going to stick is one of the main things. We're looking for contact, and once we have contact, we keep the contact. We maintain the contact at all costs, right? We're going to use our feet, we're going to use our arms to keep contact with the opponent, which goes back to what we were talking about before with the feet, where we're using the feet to stay in the opponent's space. So the feet are getting us in the space, and the hands are getting us into their hands, right? Their upper body control. So the feet control the connection between the center of mass, your center and your opponent's center of mass, and the hands are controlling what is happening with the arms and the upper body. Okay, so sticking.